Hi, Jim.
Hey, Mike. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming out to Worcester for this.
My pleasure. Even on a damp day like today.
So Tina was asking before the show, Secretary of the Commonwealth, what is this job?
The Secretary of the Commonwealth does a variety of actually pretty important things. The first of all, Secretary oversees all elections in the state. And so if you're concerned about fair elections or about the idea of getting more people involved in the democracy, Secretary of the Commonwealth has a really important role in that. Secretary also oversees access to a lot of public information. And one of the things I wanted to do when I get elected is actually make access to that public information a lot easier. A lot of people have a lot of problem finding out what's happening with their government up on Beacon Hill. Mm-hmm. We have some great technologies out there that ought to be embraced by the state in order to make the search for information in the state as easy as doing a Google search for the rest of us. Secretary also oversees businesses. A lot of business regulation goes through the Secretary's office.
Oh, really?
And oversees the regulation of lobbyists, things along that nature. My goal running for Secretary is really to take the office back for the people of for the Commonwealth, so we can better hold our government officials accountable, so we can make this information available to individuals and businesses in an easy and fair way, and really bring the democracy back to all the citizens of the Commonwealth.
If you guys have a question, you can jump in. I was just going to ask you. So what is your background, and why would you be why are you qualified to be Secretary of the Commonwealth?
Well, my day job is that I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for 20 years now. I have my own practice based in Stowe. I was a partner in a law firm in Boston for over a decade. And a lot of my practice really deals with businesses. And so the business work I've done has brought me in contact with the Secretary's office, again, for a lot of these 20 years. And so I have a real good sense as to what that office does, what good things they do, and what things they don't do well. I've also done a fair amount of study and writing on election law matters, and I think that election issues are really at the heart of how we can improve our democracy if we do things better. In a day where we have this hyper-partisanship, a lot of it in Washington and also here in Massachusetts, we really need to change the culture of our politics so we can bring people together to actually accomplish the business of government. And one of the reasons I'm running as independent is I want to be above the partisan arguments. I have no party agenda here. I really am looking to benefit all the people of the Commonwealth, not just one subgroup based on their political affiliation.
What are your thoughts on, you mentioned transparency in government, what have you. It seems as though the current Secretary's office, they say the right things in terms of the way we should be transparent, but in terms of practice, especially the way our regulations at the state level trickle down to the local government, it seems that we don't have any good best practices in play in terms of transparency. Do you think that is something that is intentional, or is it... Is transparency in government something that people actually want to be, we actually strive for, or is it just something we talk about? It seems like it's such a huge issue, especially on the local level when it comes to access to records and what have you, anything that's public. But actually getting your hands on that data is nearly impossible oftentimes.
Right. I think there's a little bit of active omission and active commission in a lot of ways here. But you really need to have somebody in the office who understands that transparency has to mean real transparency. And again, appreciate that we shouldn't be playing political games with access to information. There's a lot of information that the Secretary's office has available that people have found they've had to do FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act requests, and end up getting huge bills to pay for access to this information that we should have fairly easily and fairly simply. And I think a lot of the act of omission here is the fact that the state has not brought its technology up to speed. I mean, the information that's out there, you almost have to do a search for the right database to search for information. And we really need to be bringing these databases of information for all these sources, whether they're at the state level or at the local level. Really need to bring them together so that if you wanted to find out, all right, how did your legislator vote? Or how did your city councilor vote? Or what's that city budget item? We should be able to find that pretty easily. Again, if Google can try to put every book in the world online, why can't we do a simple search to find out what's happening with our government? I mean, we should have a single place, single portal online to do a search. Should be able to make a phone call to the Secretary's office. And frankly, there should be a Secretary's office in Worcester. If I'm elected, there will be an office in Worcester. Should be able to do it by making a phone call, or maybe even on your phone. If you've got an iPhone, you've got an Android phone, there should be an app right there to be able to type your search in, get the information you're looking for. And we really need to do this. We need to accomplish this. And you asked about my background, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I also consider myself to be is a real techie. I've always been out there on the edge of technology and looking at how best to use technology in my law practice and for the benefit of my clients around me. And I think in an information age like we're in now, in 2010, we need a secretary who understands technology and is not just waiting for somebody else to come up with the idea. I want to be a mover to improve the technology in the state, not just waiting for it to happen.
Anything else?
I've got nothing else.
I want to try to phrase a question. I don't know if I can do this very clearly. Let me try. I'm drinking some Arizona iced tea this morning. Actually, not from Arizona, from New York, and trying to get some caffeine in my head. So, Jim, I've known you for a long time. Jim actually taught me how to podcast, so you could blame him for part of the 508 show.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
I think Jim first provoked me into using Skype many years ago. So I'm going to vote for you because you're a righteous guy and you know about this kind of stuff, and you've been working on government reform campaigns and things for a long time. I guess I just want to ask some sort of general question about the challenges of running as an independent candidate without a party apparatus behind you.
It's a totally valid point. I mean, I didn't realize until this year that we don't have a single independent member of the legislature. That just struck me as odd. There's not not a single non-declared party member,
Right.
which is just a strange thing. I think the state the size, you just assume that there would be a path for independent candidates to run, and that's not to
Heck, we have
I don't mean that to sound disheartening, but it's just it's a reality of politics around here.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, hey, we have 2 independent U.S. senators. Why don't we have 200 legislators in the legislature in Massachusetts? Why isn't there one person who's not a Republican or a Democrat?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I can sort of understand the argument that people, because there's so many people who are independent voters in the state, that an independent candidate would appeal to them, but that, it's not just like winning an election is a lot more than that. Winning an election is a lot of like nuts and bolts and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And everything of the political parties, they know how to do nuts and bolts. They know how to do hard work.
Right, absolutely, and that's the challenge of being an independent. But I look at the political climate we're in right now, and you look at the victory of Scott Brown in January, and that wasn't a victory of Massachusetts turning red, but it was really a victory of the people saying enough of the complacent politician out there. And Martha Coakley and the Democratic Party, in a lot of ways, was complacent with that election.
Completely.
There you go.
Agree.
So certainly the challenge of being an independent without having that party apparatus is daunting, and I have to call my support from lots of different places. But I can say I have on my team, I have Democrats, I have Republicans, and I have people who are independents on my team. And it shows the breadth of the message I'm trying to put out there. Yes, it means I have to work harder. But I look at the demographics of Massachusetts, where over half the registered voters in Massachusetts are in fact independent. They're not Republicans or they're not Democrats. And we have to get past the idea that, oh yeah, the Democrats dominate the state. Yes, at the bottom line of the legislature they do. But the registered voters, they do not. And I think we're at a time now where if there's a plausible, thoughtful, hopefully intelligent, independent candidate is out there, that the independent voters will say, listen, we don't have to simply go for the incumbent Democrat here or a Republican, that we can actually vote for a separate voice. Bill Maher on his program a couple weeks ago was talking with the former independent governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, and he asked the question, when some people would like to see independent candidates win, how can they manage to elect them? And ex-Governor Ventura's comment was, vote for them. And it's simple enough. Now, I still have to go out there and do the work and earn the vote of the voters here in Worcester and around the state. But I like to think I have some ideas out there that will actually generate some thought and hopefully generate some interest as we go between now and the November election.
And if you can find a way to get a role in a completely awesome movie like Predator, that wouldn't hurt either.